Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my 2025 NFL Power Rankings. Today, we're talking about the Carolina Panthers. And looking back at last year, it was a little bit of a mixed bag. But if you really look at the end of the season and look at it from the lens of they brought in Dave Canales to do really one specific job, and he did exactly that, it's difficult to feel too badly about how last season went. Canales really fixed Bryce Young, and that's exactly what he got hired to do. Bryce Young was really struggling in his rookie year. He was struggling early last year. Then they benched him for Andy Dalton, and Bryce Young came back into the game after Dalton suffered a very serious off-the-field injury. And then Bryce Young just balled out week after week after week. I think there was like a month-long period where he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Really, he was playing out of his mind. Out of his mind, Bryce Young was playing great football, diagnosing zone coverage very well, going through his reads, and constantly making the right decisions, whether the pocket was crumbling or not. He was just playing so much more confident. It was very visible that seemed to be what he was missing early in his career. He was just playing without much confidence, and all of a sudden he comes back after Andy Dalton is no longer starting for the team, and he's playing with so much more poise. All of a sudden, he was a very different quarterback at that point, and I think we got to give Canales that credit. The offense he designed, similarly to what he did with Baker Mayfield, highly elevated the play of the guy playing the quarterback position. And now Bryce Young is really looking like the guy they drafted number 1 overall out of Alabama. At least that's the story when they're playing against zone coverage. A big theme for last year was when they faced off against man coverage, things weren't going too well. They struggled to operate with the same consistency and same efficiency down to down. And that was because in man coverage, it's less about scheming stuff open and receivers settling versus zone. It's just about wide receivers beat your man. And last year, they weren't able to do that. They were pretty effective against zone coverage, as I've said. But when teams started to just say, okay, my corner is man on your best receiver, try and beat me, those receivers didn't win often. That was because of simply a lack of talent. Now they added new guys. T-Mac, they added him with a top 10 pick this year. He's a receiver that I liked. He's someone who's a physical body, nuanced route runner too. I think he might be able to do a lot for this offense to be a true number 1 target. Xavier Legette was their first-round pick the year prior. He didn't have a great rookie year, but he still is a very nice, physical wide receiver who has the speed. He has the size. It's just about seeing him kind of pack that all together. He's entering year 2. Let's see if he can really take that step up. And then Adam Thielen is their third wide receiver. He's someone who settles well versus zone. He's part of the reason that they're so great against zone coverage, but he's not someone that's going to separate against man coverage. He does a lot of damage in the slot, and he's a very safe weapon for Bryce Young, but he's not a game breaker. I think that that's what this team really misses, a true game breaker, and that's what they need T-Mac to really establish himself as. Now, with the run game, I think this is an attack that depends heavily on the offensive line when they're running the football. They did pretty well on the ground last year. Very quietly, Chuba Hubbard had a really good season statistically. And a big reason why was because this offensive line was performing. They were moving bodies. Aquanu looked really good. He was dominating the line of scrimmage often. And quietly, Robert Hunt was the team's best player last year. He was absolutely outstanding, both pass blocking and run blocking. One of the NFL's more underrated offensive lines right here. I do have some problems with the lack of depth at running back. Chuba Hubbard's just fine. He has good vision. He's able to take advantage of the good play of the offensive line. But beyond him, I don't really like much there. And then at tight end, I find this to be a really interesting story because right now, Tommy Tremble is listed as the starter, but I think Jatavion Sanders is the better player. And if he could really establish himself as like a true guy for them, then this offense can really get going. In my personal opinion, I think Bryce Young could have another good year. I think this offense can play well. It absolutely can. Canales and his more West Coast style offense should work very well, assuming that T-Mac is able to really elevate them when they do face off against these teams that try and challenge them more from a talent perspective. But this team is still ranked 27, and a big reason why is that defense. That defense is, yikes, it's bad. It's a really bad defensive unit. Ajaro Evero is the defensive coordinator. I think they are going to be at their best when they're playing out of their 3-4, their base defense. They sometimes are going to line up in their 3-3 over front, where they have 3 defensive linemen on the field and then 1 stand-up edge that's really a linebacker, and then 2 linebackers behind them, and then 5 DBs. They're going to try and do that, but I just think they lack the depth in the secondary, or just straight up lack the talent in the secondary to really want to play that way. If you ask me, for this defense to have a good year, they're going to have to win with their defensive front. That's why I think they're going to be at their best when they are in that 3-4 defense. But they're going to mix it up. That's what Evero likes to do. He likes to mix up the personnel a little bit. He doesn't want to just stay in base. No defensive coordinators really like to do that too much anymore. And there is some talent here. Derek Brown is an outstanding player, right? He's someone that holds his ground very well versus the run. Just a true unit, 6'5", 320, but man, he can't get moved. He doesn't get moved ever. He plays with such great leverage, and he has a lot of technique to disengage. He's a true playmaker on the interior of their defensive line. And then J.C. Horn is a very good player when he is on the field. Of course, he's been bit by the injury bug a lot recently, but they need him to stay healthy because I have big questions about the rest of this corner room. Right now, I have them in a 3-4 defense, meaning there's only one corner other than J.C. Horn out there. And that other corner is Michael Jackson, who allowed 600 yards last year. That is not a good look whatsoever. They can't afford for J.C. Horn to get hurt because I question whether or not they could afford to have Michael Jackson out there at all, let alone having him as your number 1 cornerback. But J.C. Horn does have an injury history. We can't just ignore that, no matter how good the guy is in coverage. He is a great player when he's on the field, but there is concerns about his consistent ability to stay on the field. Their safety room got a big buff by adding Trevon Moehrig, but still, it isn't a unit I really like. The secondary is not good at all. It's a really bad one, if I'm being 100% honest. Even though I like J.C. Horn, and Moehrig is a fine player, there's just not much else to like. They completely lack depth, if I'm being entirely honest, there. In the defensive front, they have some more talent on the interior defensive line. They have a lot of other big bodies, like Shai Tuttle, like A'Shawn Robinson. They're going to be able to rotate in there. But they are weak at the edge rusher position, and that's coming from someone that likes Nick Gordon. I'm a big fan of the rookie. I think he might have a pretty good year. But still, I don't like this pass rush, okay? And that's with Derek Brown being a capable player. I am not a fan of this pass rush. I really have my concerns about this defense and their ability because, well, they have a good player or two and then a nice rotation on the interior defensive line. It's just not a well-rounded unit. I don't think those linebackers are really going to elevate you. I think that edge rush duo is straight up weak. And they have some other guys they might try and get in there, like Patrick Jones, but I don't think any of them are anything too special. I like Gordon, but he's going to be a rookie for them, and I don't think he exactly is known for his pass rushing ability. This is just not a defense that I like whatsoever. Because here's the thing, too. Ajaro Evero is a defensive coordinator some people really like, but here's the issue with him. He runs cover 3, and he coaches his guys up pretty well sometimes to run that. The issue is that that's all he really does. And when you're going to be a one-dimensional defense, you have to have talent. You have to be great at running that specific coverage. Because if you're not exactly beating teams in terms of X's and O's. You are putting it on the Jimmies and Joes to go ahead and beat the opposition. And when you're running cover 3 over and over and over, and you don't really have the personnel to dominate in spite of the offense knowing exactly what coverage you're trying to run, bad things could happen. Of course, he's going to add his wrinkles. He's going to run cover 3 out of too high. He's going to run cover 3 cloud sometimes and cover 3 sky some other times, right? He's going to change things up, but it's still cover 3. And offenses are going to know that. They're going to run cover 3 beaters. And it's just going to be on your personnel to go ahead and beat that. This isn't a good team in terms of defensive personnel. They don't have overwhelming talent. And they're not going to try and make up for that with schemes and X's and O's. If you're not winning on the whiteboard, you're definitely not winning on the field because you don't have the talent to win on the field. I just don't like the idea of this being a very stagnant and stubborn defensive unit. They're going to throw some stunts and blitzes at opposition, but it still is not a defense that I really like, and I don't think the scheme they're running really helps at least this personnel grouping. If it was a much better, much more talented defense, okay, fine. Stick to whatever you want to stick to. You don't have to go ahead and challenge teams on the whiteboard. You're able to do whatever you want. If your team is great at running cover 3, you could stick to running cover 3. This team isn't great at running cover 3, but they're still going to keep doing it over and over and over because that is Evero's style. I don't really like that idea. I think this defense is going to get torched. And because of that, I think what could be a pretty good offense is going to go to waste. And that really upsets me. But let's see how their season looks in totality by looking at their schedule. Now, with this schedule, I have them finishing 7-10, which, considering that they're ranked 27th, that might be a surprise to a lot of people. And I completely get that. But I think they match up pretty well against a lot of these teams that are on their schedule. I mean, we started off. Jacksonville isn't exactly a tough opponent. Now, I know that you're playing in Jacksonville, but I think this is a team where the Panthers are going to be able to do their damage through the air, right? Because the Jaguars secondary is not very good. I think BTJ might pop off. I think Brian Thomas Jr. might have a really good day. And I think this could be a very high-scoring affair right here. But I trust Bryce Young more than I trust Trevor Lawrence. And for me, when I'm evaluating a shootout like that, I'm normally going to take the team with the better quarterback. Then we see the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are a lot more well-rounded. I think the Cardinals have a nice defensive unit along with their offense. The game's in Arizona. I think that's going to be a win for the Cardinals. Then the Falcons. This one, we're going to see this matchup twice throughout the year. But you look at Atlanta and how they're built as a team. The fact that they have this many different ways of attacking you on the offensive side of the ball, whether it's Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, I know he gets kind of a bad rep, but he still is consistently like a 700-yard, 650-yard guy. And then Darnell Mooney is not a bad receiver. Those are just too many weapons for a Carolina defense that really isn't overly deep to deal with. So while I think the Panthers might be able to score a decent amount here, because the Falcons are going to give them some stuff. A.J. Terrell is a corner that's more of don't give up the big play than he is a prevent a play from even happening type of guy. He's way more of like a spot drop zone defender who's going to let stuff happen underneath. Carolina might be able to have a pretty good day here. That being said, I think Atlanta wins because I trust their offense to perform very well against that Carolina defense. Now, against the Patriots, I like those guys on the Patriots defense. I think they are going to dare the Panthers receiver core to beat them, right? Man coverage, Tet, you got to go ahead and beat Christian Gonzalez in this game. And I just don't see that happening. I think the Patriots defense is going to give the Panthers too many problems, while that Panthers defense won't do well enough to prevent the Patriots from winning a lower scoring game right here. And then the Dolphins, they're going to do damage through the air in this one. Because once again, I don't trust that Panthers corner room much. Jay Sehorn probably gets hurt somewhere between week 5 and week 10, right? Somewhere in this 5-week span, he probably deals with an injury because that normally, those injury-prone players, this is when the physical tolls of the season really start to kick in sometimes. So I think there's a world where not only can Jalen Waddle have a great day here, we might also see Tyreek Hill have a great day. In that situation, I just think the Dolphins are going to score too much. I also think the Dolphins are going to be able to do their thing, running a lot of outside zone. They're going to be able to attack Carolina. I like Carolina's interior defensive line, like I said earlier, so teams that want to run the ball a lot inside might struggle. But a team like the Dolphins that don't even try to establish a rushing attack inside, they're just fine. They're normally just fine in these games, right? Against a Panthers defense that isn't great at the edge position. I think the Dolphins are going to run the ball all over them. Then the Cowboys against the Panthers. I know I have the Panthers going on a losing streak right now, but trust me, they're going to recover really soon. This is one where I could see them winning it. I could see a Panthers upset in Carolina. I mean, I don't have them winning a game at home yet. But I also look at this, and I know that the Cowboys are going to try and, once again, play man coverage. They are going to try and disrupt the timing of routes. They are going to try and do things to really throw the Panthers off their rhythm. Micah Parsons can get to the quarterback in an instant. We know that causes problems. And when the Panthers' offense can't play well, we know the defense isn't going to step up. But then they're going to go ahead and play against a Jets team that, yeah, they might try and be physical, right? But I also think Carolina, at this point, they have a couple of adaptions, right? Because they faced off against a Cowboys team that challenged them so much physically. Because they played off against a Patriots team that challenged them so much with man coverage. I think now they're going to look at Aaron Glenn and say, you know what? Yeah, okay. You might be trying to play a lot of man coverage against us, but you're also going to try and blitz me a lot. And Bryce Young was very good against the blitz last year. I think he's going to be able to win against the Jets, even on the road. Then the Bills off the bye. They're just too good of a team. I mean, maybe you could argue they're starting to get hot right now, so maybe they upset the Bills, maybe give them a little bit too much of a fight. But, listen, Bills off a bye, I don't know. It's tough for me to pick the Panthers over that. Then another very well-coached team that's going to be physical. They're going to put Jair Alexander in some man coverage. They're going to try and throw off the timing of certain routes. And they're not going to try and blitz a lot, right? That's a big thing. We know Jordan Love and that receiver core, they are bound to ball out against a defense that's built like this. I think the Panthers don't win that one, but I do think they're going to win at home against the Saints, right? I think now their back's against the wall. They're heading into Week 10, and they only have 2 wins. Now they're definitely going to win that game. Definitely going to win in Week 10 against the Saints in their stadium. It's about time they get a home win. Then, like I said, I think the Falcons match up really well against them. Maybe you could argue they could do a little bit more against that defense because the Falcons aren't going to be overly physical on the defensive side of the ball. But I think the Falcons offense is going to pick that Panthers defense apart. I think the Panthers are going to upset San Francisco. I just think this is a game where San Fran can get caught sleeping. And like I said, Carolina's back seems to be against the wall a lot here. I don't think they can get back-to-back upsets, though. I think they know the bye week is coming, though. They want to recover, so they win against the Saints. Buccaneers, they kind of match up well against Tampa. They do. Because Tampa is such a blitz-heavy team under Todd Bowles, I could see them beating Tampa twice. I can. I had them beating them once in that final week. I could see it happening twice, but I am going to take Tampa in one of these matchups because, once again, a very nice passing attack playing against that secondary. Problems are going to arise from that. And then I think the Panthers are also going to beat Seattle. While I don't love the Panthers pass rush as a whole, I trust Derek Brown against Sam Darnold's face. I know that causes problems for them. And I also think Bryce Young isn't going to be fooled by some of the Mike McDaniel different looks that he's going to send. I think the Panthers are going to be able to win that one. And overall, close the season pretty well. Although the start of the season might not look great, I just think there's a lot of teams that they don't match up well against early in that schedule. And I know that's very upsetting. But, there's a world where this team finishes with a lot more wins, and that's because the schedule is decently weak. The Panthers are a team I think can surprise people, but the defense is going to have to overperform. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all again next time.